Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Making of an Exception podcast. My name's Kirk Graham, and today we got a special guest. Her name is Krista Carroll, and she is the CEO and co-founder of Latitude Co., right? Is it, or just Latitude?
Well, our website is lat.co.
Lat.co, and which is a creative agency that does amazing things, but also we'll get all into it, but they do amazing things through their nonprofit and works all around the world as well. And so thanks for being here, Krista.
Thanks for having me.
We're so glad that you're here. We had met a few years ago. It had 2 or 3 years ago at prayer breakfast here in Minnesota. And Bill Svoboda was the guy running this thing and put us on a panel together. And so when you were answering the questions at the prayer breakfast, you said so many things that I was like, man, she is amazing. Her husband's amazing. And I think he was in the front row, like cheering you on. But the way you guys have built a company, the way you've built your marriage and your family, everything. I was like, man, they are doing it. And it was so inspirational.
Oh, right back at you.
3 years later, I'm glad to be able to meet again and that you're here. But tell us about Latitude and what that is, the projects that you work on, and kind of how long it's been around as well.
Yeah, so we founded Latitude back in 2009, so we're going to have our 10-year anniversary this November.
Yep.
But we're a creative agency specializing in brand design and experience design. We work with a lot of brands and bring them to life at retail. For example, like Adidas is one of our top clients, and we love bringing them to life in retailers as well as like crazy experiential stuff around the country as they're launching new shoes. And then we do great work for clients, which earns us the privilege of being able to do work in the world, which is why we started our company. 50% of our profits go to nonprofit partners around the globe who are doing work to empower women and children primarily living in extreme poverty. We want to empower them to be able to use their God-given gifts to empower, to change their communities, change their lives, and provide for their kids. So
that is the craziest. Everything that you just said is the craziest thing. You said that 50% of your profits go all around the world to help people. And nobody, like I've never, like you might have a list of a few companies that do that. I don't know if you do, but I've never heard that ever. Churches don't do that. And you've built a for-profit company and you give 50% away. And let's talk about that in a second. I have questions. I know what brand design is. What's experience design?
Yeah. So as retail, the landscape of retail is changing, it's really important to connect the consumer to the brand through experiences. So and it's outside of just the retail space, but we get the privilege of working in the retail space a lot. So it's coming into a retailer and creating an experience that is meaningful for the consumers, that allows them to connect with a brand on a deeper level. So, for instance, sometimes we're doing influencer parties at boutique sneaker shops, or
I didn't get the invites to. Is there like a list that I missed? Shoot.
Check.
You said influencers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Never mind. Talk about it later. No, so you have influencer parties?
Yeah,
what do they do?
Yeah, we'll design like an influencer party, a photo booth, an experience, build out the whole, the whole landscape of it, as well as the party or experience. We did something for the the NHL, excuse me.
Got it.
For Adidas to come to life in hockey stadiums.
So it's like I guess the best example that I have in my mind is when the Super Bowl was in Minneapolis last year. They had all these different, like Verizon was throwing parties and different experiences, and there's like football experiences, but so it's like that. You
Very
design those experiences for all different types of events.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Also, you said Adidas is one of your main clients.
Yeah.
And as you said it, I was like, man, Adidas I feel like has made like a massive comeback. Not that they were struggling, I don't think, but I feel like in culture and what people like young people are wearing, like Nike felt like it was on top, but Adidas is like coming back. Are you guys a part of those conversations, and have you helped obviously make that happen?
I'd like to say so. My team, they're wickedly talented, but the Originals fashion channel sneakers have just become something outside of athletic wear. And so Adidas Originals have just killed it in the last few years. And we've had a lot of fun working with them on bringing
Do they give you the credit for it?
Oh, no, I don't know. I mean, the teams that we work with do. We certainly high five the crap out of it, but
It's awesome.
It's a lot of fun.
Also, something that I learned about your company, the culture of it is that if you're working at Latitude and you're working on an Adidas project or a Puma project or I don't know who else you work for, but
New
you have to wear
Balance,
you have to wear the shoes that the project that you're working on, and they like repping that.
Yeah. Oh, we love it. Like our team's super passionate about the clients that we get to work for. So yeah, you're going to see sneakers all over the place, and our teams are going to be competitive with each other about what sneakers they're sporting. And it's a ton of fun.
It's awesome. There's a guy that I know that works at Target, and he works for like the household like cleaning section of Target. And that would just be the worst to have to rep. It's just so cool that you guys work with sneakers and with shoes and all that. Also, what kind of shoes are you wearing?
Oh, I'm wearing Sorels right now.
All right. Are they a client?
We've done a little bit of work with them.
Nice.
Yeah. But it was fun. We had a Google project recently, and that gave my husband the excuse to go and get Google Homes for all of the rooms in our home too. Any excuse to sport the brand. So,
that's awesome. And your husband is the president of the company.
Yes.
So you guys started it together. When did you start Latitude?
So in November 2009, do you want the short or the long?
I mean, we got all day.
All right.
So all day, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I know. So in November 2009, Jeremy and I were living in New York City with our 2 kids at the time.
Yep.
Chasing
Are you from there?
No, but we had lived out there for about 5 years. We're from Minneapolis.
Yep.
But he was out there selling commercial print and working with retailers and luxury liquor brands and real estate companies and really chasing success and doing a great job in the process, but ending up emptier and emptier.
Yeah.
I was home with our kids at the time, but he was working out of our apartment, so I was getting to know the business just because I don't like to sit still. And I loved doing what I could to support him.
Yep.
And
how many kids did you have at the time?
He had 2.
2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so he was chasing hard. I was feeling God calling us in a different direction. I'm praying hard about what that looked like. And he hit a wall in August and just had sold the biggest deal he'd ever sold and felt like he should be having that mountaintop moment.
Yeah.
And instead was left like empty. So we called our favorite nonprofit, Healing Haiti, which was founded by his aunt and uncle. And he just said, Jeff, He said, Jeff and Alan, can I go to Haiti with you? I feel like God's calling me out of my comfort zone.
I gotta get out of this.
Yeah. Like I'm actually kind of disgusted with what's going on here. And I just need to see something different. So he was on a plane in November of 2009. And that's where he met like kids living in extreme poverty. And and as he was sitting in City Soleil, like face to face with these kids who don't have access to clean water or education, and a lot of who are struggling with medical conditions that'll never get attention, he just felt like all he had learned in his life, like what you do for the least of me, least of these. And when I was hungry, did you give me food? When I was thirsty, did you? And had felt like he had wasted 30 years of his life serving himself.
His whole life.
Yeah, right. I mean, we were 30, 31 years old. And so he came back after 3 days in Haiti and was convicted that we needed to work as hard for those kiddos as we do for our own. That's where the 50% model was born. It wasn't like a crazy business plan. It was just this gut feeling that we were supposed to work as hard for them. And so you split the pie, right, equally. And
was that like a moment? Like, do you remember was that at a like kitchen table and you guys are talking about it? Like, how did you guys make the decision? Because you hadn't even started Latitude yet.
No.
But from there you were like, we're gonna live this way.
Yeah. So he came home and he was like, hey, Krista, this is what we're supposed to do. And I was like super excited because I'd been praying that God would reveal himself really in an obvious way to Jeremy too, because I'd felt this discontent. And so I said, honey, let's maybe pray about it for a week. We have 2 kids. We had just bought our condo at the week before the market crashed in 2008. So our tiny condo in New York, wasn't worth what we had paid for it.
Yeah.
We had tried to sell it like 6 months prior, not even a showing. It was just not the time to be selling. And so I said, let's pray about it. We got 2 mouths to feed. Let's take a week. Well, after the week, God had continued to like convict him and myself. And so we sat at the kitchen table and we decided what's our worst case scenario, which is super freeing. For those of you who are like thinking about taking a leap of faith or
Yep.
changing life big time, like it's super freeing to just say, what's worst case scenario?
Like, what's the worst thing that could happen?
And for me, for us, I called my parents and said, hey, you know, those 2 little grandkids that you love so much that are 1,000 miles away, how would you like to have them closer? Might sound a little bit manipulative of me, but
Yeah, totally.
no, but luckily my mom and dad were like, hey, we'd love to have you. We've got a basement. Like, you're welcome to live here if that's what it takes.
Yep.
So our worst case scenario was my parents' basement. Our kids weren't going to starve and like we're going to be together, right?
Yeah.
So we sat at the kitchen table and said, let's put our condo on the market. If it doesn't sell, we foreclose.
Yep.
Which, like, in my right mind, like, would have been something I would have never had as an option.
Yeah,
but I
it
knew
sounds-
that.
it
sounds
like,
crazy,
why-
right?
yeah,
Like-
like, how is this even what we're talking about? Because he had the job. It's not like you guys were making money.
Yeah.
So you guys are choosing. We're gonna start giving 50% away.
Yeah. And we just so we're looking at foreclosure, which for me, like, I'd never paid a bill late in my life. I'm like
Yeah.
a rule follower, right? But for me, it was like a small price to pay to meet a need of someone who has nothing, right?
Yep.
So luckily I just felt really convicted about it.
Had you ever been to Haiti?
I hadn't.
So how did you, as a wife and a mother of 2,
Mm-hmm.
how do you go on the journey with your husband when he goes there, sees it, experiences it? Because as a pastor, I've been on global teams without my wife, and you come home and and there's the struggle of like, man, my whole world's upside down.
Yeah.
But she didn't see the same faces. She didn't sleep in a tent with no air. Like, she didn't have the same experience. And so how did he kind of bring you on that journey? Or for you, how did you know, like, this is what God's doing?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I look back and I think there was a variety of things that like God put in place to allow me to feel on board, even though I hadn't been in the field.
Yep.
There's an album by Sarah Groves, and I had been listening to it on repeat, like weirdly, for like 6 months. And she's big on justice, social justice, and following God's call. And there's a song that is a really beautiful song that talks about, like, I saw what I saw and I couldn't forget it.
Yeah.
And
you can sing it if you want.
yeah, right. And for some like reason, I had listened to that song and like felt really convicted by the words that she had about like seeing things in this world, seeing need in this world, and not being able to look away, or like we just couldn't not do something. And so luckily I just felt it on my heart. And honestly, when Jeremy came back, it was like, oh, thank God, like he gets it and he's as convicted.
So you were kind of going on a personal journey, and it was almost like a release when he came back and was like, we need to do this.
Yeah. Like we were just becoming
awesome.
uglier versions of ourselves, really. Like we were chasing all the wrong things. Like we were keeping our faith in a box on the weekends or at prayer time with our kids at night. And but our faith wasn't reflected in what we were doing every day. Like our faith wasn't something that was inconvenient. Like our faith was whatever worked for us. You know, yes, we believed in a Jesus. We believed in a Lord, but he wasn't in the driver's seat of our lives. Like we were giving out of our excess, not out of sacrifice. So I think like we just needed to get really uncomfortable for God to lead. And I was just really grateful that Jeremy was ready to get uncomfortable.
Yes. Yeah. Everything. I have a million questions, and we're not even to how you started Latitude. But how, like, so backtrack further before we move forward. Backtrack further. How did you get to the point where you're even having conversations with God about that? Like, how did you get, like, and you could talk about your family and your upbringing and what you've been a part of, because nobody's out there, even Christians, and not nobody, but because obviously you have lived it, but nobody's out there trying to go, man, my faith doesn't feel genuine, and we're becoming uglier versions of ourselves, and talking with the Lord about it, and we need to get more uncomfortable. And, you know, it's just crazy to actually do it. And so you're on this personal journey. How did you get to where you were there?
Yeah. So, you know, I was raised in a really middle class family. Like we never had more than we needed, but we always had enough.
Yep.
But my mom's a teacher, my dad worked for the state, and they were super fiscally conservative, except for generosity. Like they were over the top generous with people.
How did you know that?
And they were always doing it like on the sly. But like, for example, like there'd be, my brother played hockey and there was a single mom and her son, struggling to pay for his hockey. So they would anonymously like pay for his season without him ever knowing. But they would share things like that with us kids to understand like what's important. Like, hey, this is something we're blessed to be in the position to be able to afford to do. And so we're going to do it. They were always super quiet about it and never like, no one ever knew what they were doing, but us kids were watching.
Yeah.
And
as a kid, did you ever get bummed out that you didn't have more than you needed? Like there's things that you wanted or things that you would want to do that other families are doing, but you know that your parents are giving it to other causes?
You know what? Weirdly, no. And I think part of that is because my parents never modeled comparison.
Yeah.
They never modeled jealousy. They never modeled keeping up with the Joneses. They just didn't. Like and so I'm so grateful. I think about that a lot now because I was just a super content kid, and I want that for my kids, but I don't know where that came from except for the fact that my parents never modeled jealousy. They never modeled comparison, which is the stealer of all joy. So I guess maybe when I was like 20, I wished that my, shoes at camp were Tevas instead of the Target brand. Once as I became an adult, I started to notice things like that. I mean, that's a really dumb example, but as I reached 20 years old, I was thinking, oh man, but
I feel the same way. I ran track the first year it was offered. I think it was like 6th or 7th grade. And I was like, I'm going to be in track. And we went to Payless Shoes, and we got shoes that didn't have cleats on the bottom, like nothing, but they were like running shoes, from Payless. Like that's, and I was so embarrassed like that. I had the worst shoes. And then it's even worse. My first track meet ever, and there's more stories about this, but my first track meet ever, it was the 100-meter dash or the 100-yard dash. And my dad and sister were in the stands and like all proud. And I pulled my groin during and I fell and I was down, and I don't think I even crossed the finish line. My dad came out of the stands and we just went home, and so it's probably better that he didn't buy super expensive cleats.
Maybe they would have saved you from.
But I grew up the same way. There's moments where it's like I wish we could be. But I grew up a pastor's kid, and my favorite thing ever was when missionaries would come to the church and we would go out to lunch after, because it's the only time we ever went out to eat, like Olive Garden or Red Lobster. Yeah, and I would be so excited, not just about that, but hearing the stories and then knowing my parents are being generous in regards to missions work. Like I always knew that, and so. I feel a similarity in that. Like growing up, it was like a sense of honor. Like I loved that about our family. But there's plenty of times where it's like, man, I wish I could get real cleats like everybody else.
We're human, right?
Like even in hockey, we didn't have breezers. Like early on, like we didn't have breezers or shoulder pads because my dad's like, you're not checking yet, so you don't have to. You're not like hitting people yet. You're 5 years old. You don't need them. Everybody else has breezers. But it's all good. I don't know what you were talking about before that, but
so I guess my family, set the stage for generosity, and then
what was faith like? Because there's a bunch of people out there that may be generous, but they aren't living for the Lord. Yeah. Were you raised in the church, faith-filled family?
I was actually raised Catholic. Jeremy was too. Went to church every Sunday. Youth group was actually like a huge deal for me.
Like Catholic youth group?
Yep.
I've never even heard of a Catholic youth group.
I had an awesome youth minister, Teresa Rousseau, and she's still a dear friend of ours.
No way.
But and
that's awesome.
And honestly, it saved me. Like I did, like middle school and high school were horrible. Like kids are mean. I did not fit in, probably because I didn't have the name brand stuff, but didn't realize that was why. Yeah. But I didn't fit in, and there was always that yearning. But I met kids outside of my school through youth group. Yeah. Actually, one of them being Jeremy. I met him when we were 12. We were best friends. Yeah. But just having like my worldview opened up a little bit outside of like my own school and this own, like, these little cliques
Yeah.
was a blessing. So God, like in his goodness, allowed that to be a part of my life. And that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And then, I always knew that I wanted to make a difference. And I went into education to do so. So I taught for 6 years before we moved to New York. And I loved building community, helping kids, figure out their giftedness and develop it and, create a culture of kindness. And so as we were in New York with our own little kids, like I loved being a mom. I loved it. But I did know that our resources that God was blessing us with were being consumed on us.
Yeah.
And that bothered me.
Yeah.
And it's interesting now, like Luke 12:48, to whom much is given, much is expected, has been sort of our marching verse since that experience in Haiti for Jeremy. But I think God was knocking on my heart about it long before.
And that's such a, like, for me, like even people listening, a lot of people that are listening would go, well, I'm not the person that has much, like, but compared to somebody, they have much.
Yeah. So
was there a point in, like, maybe in Jeremy's career or his success, like when he's out crushing it and you're a mom, like now we have much? Like, was there a time of like, whoa, we really have money, we should do something about it? Or was it always this sense of like the way we're living our life, like whether it was early on to the biggest deal he had ever done, like, was there a point of like, now we have much?
What's interesting? When we were living in New York, we probably had less compared to our peers than we ever have. I mean, the people that we were hanging out with just like had a lot of money. I mean,
Everything,
to live in New York, you have to. And we were still struggling. Like we were living paycheck to paycheck, even though we were making great money. Like New York, you bleed money.
Yeah.
You sneeze and you're $100
Where to go?
poorer. So actually, like in the comparison game, we had less than we'd probably ever had.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think our worldview had increased so much that you realize like you're not in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota anymore, and you realize like the world is made up of a whole lot of diversity.
Yep.
And there are people who are struggling to survive, and in our neighborhood in New York, like not our friends, but you get to know people you get to know street, even the homeless people, like it's the same ones on the same corners. There's Pam in front of City Market there, and you realize like, holy cow, one of my friends, Barbara Lupient, says, we've won the lottery in life by just the longitude and latitude in which we were born. Yeah. Like just because we were born here in the United States where we have infrastructure and clean water and an economy, like we have won the lottery. So what do we do with that?
Yeah.
So luckily, like that, my eyes were just being opened to like the world's needs. And in our world now, like with the internet and interconnectivity, like we can't be ignorant about that anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
no, totally. Totally. I'm with you. So that's all the foundation of how you decided we're going to give away 50%. And then you're about to start Latitude. Did you start it while you were in New York? Because now you have offices still in New York, Minneapolis, and then
Portland.
Yeah.
So we were sitting at the kitchen table and decided I was at the worst case scenario. Yeah. And so Jeremy and I just decided this is what we're going to do. And we were sitting there and feeling a tremendous amount of peace.
Yep.
That didn't really make sense with what we were doing, but
totally.
That's where like you're in God's will, right? And all of a sudden his email dinged. And I was so annoyed with him that he was looking at his email. I'm like, dude, we just gave our lives over to the Lord. Like, can we sit in it for like a moment? Yeah. And he was like, oh my gosh, Krista, this man, our neighbor downstairs, who I had never spoken to, like maybe ran into him once on an elevator, had emailed Jeremy and said, hey, would you ever be interested in selling your apartment? Because we'd really like to expand ours. Like literally within 2 minutes of making this choice, God was like, hey, guess what?
And you'd already tried to sell it with no showings.
We had tried to sell it 6 months prior, like not one showing.
Yeah.
And so we were like, yeah, actually, here's what we'd need. And we just told them what we had paid for it, what we'd need to walk away to like.
Yep.
And he was like, I could have escrow in your account on Monday. Like we want to.
We'll do it.
Yeah. And so we ended up staying there and renting it back from him for 5 months while he had architects working on it, whatever. And we rented it back for a quarter of what our mortgage was. Like,
no.
I know, it's just crazy. And so we were able to start in New York and start to transition Jeremy's client base and just start to get people to understand what we were doing. And our neighbor, actually, Joey Perry, she's the sweetest lady in the world. She's our age and was on a similar journey, had gone on that first trip with Jeremy to Haiti and was like, I'm all in. So we had time to train her in. She wasn't in that industry. So that 6 months, 5-6 months allowed us to train her in, transition.
Does she still work with you?
Yeah, she's
no way.
Yeah, now
in
she
New
lives.
York.
She actually just moved back to Minnesota about a year ago.
No way.
Or not back to Minnesota, but to Minnesota.
Moved here. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, so we started in New York, then moved back to Minnesota. Did move into my parents' basement for a while.
No way.
Yeah, and yeah, that was.
Gave it all up. What does Latitude mean? Why did you call your company that?
Yeah, so we actually started out as print number 4 change. I know, it's brilliant. That was before we were experts in brand design.
Yeah.
But about 3 years in, we decided that first of all, we were doing way more than print, and so it wasn't applicable anymore. And went through a naming exercise and a brand design exercise, and Latitude really spoke to us because what we're trying to do is connect people here to connect to other places, right? So connect clients here who have business needs that we can meet, and then it earns us the privilege of connecting with people around the world. And so Latitude just made sense.
So the mission side of it, the nonprofit side of it, is why you titled it the way you did.
Yeah,
or
we're the
titled.
Connector, right?
Yeah,
named it.
Named it. That's crazy. So at what point did you become CEO? So you're a mom, and now you have 4 kids. At what point did you become CEO running this company?
Yeah. So at the beginning, it's interesting. I just thought I'd really be behind the scenes, like Jeremy's vision. And Joey was amazing on the sales front and producing front. And I just thought I would do all the back end stuff, like the finance, like any legal stuff, filing stuff. And then as we grew,
and you were a teacher before that.
I was a teacher before that.
So you're up for the legal stuff and the finance.
Google's amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm a lifelong learner. Like I love to learn. So I was up for the challenge. And so Jeremy, from the beginning, he was like, hey, you're going to own this because I trust you more than I trust myself. You're always going to make the right choice.
Yep.
And so while I can come up with a million crazy ideas, if you own this, like I know it's always going to be in good hands. So, so that's just sort of how it started, but never really thought it would be a full-time. Yeah. And now that we're 100 people in 3 offices, like the CEO role looks a lot different than it did back in 2009.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. So now, now we have a finance department and an HR department and an operations manager, but for a long time I was playing all those roles. And now I feel like we're kind of at that CEO role where I can be a part of the, have some bandwidth for a whole lot of strategy and vision casting with Jeremy. And
initially, like when it was small and he goes, hey, you're going to be the CEO. Sometimes like when you start, like entrepreneurs, you start a company and like it's not really off the ground. You go like, oh, CEO, like I got this. Like, but was there a point of like transition of like I don't know if I have this. Like it's kind of overwhelming. I don't have the right training.
Yeah.
Or has it been kind of the whole time like stepping into bigger shoes than you feel like you're equipped for?
The whole time.
Do you feel that way now?
Yeah, for sure. I'd be an idiot to not like feel that way. Like, or just a lack of self-awareness. So,
but so to your words, I guarantee you there's a bunch of idiot CEOs out there who think,
I got this.
Yeah. 100%.
No, I laugh like, well, first of all, for years, the CEO title just felt like sort of a farce too. Like, no one else was playing that role, but I certainly didn't feel like I was playing that role. Like it just felt weird and uncomfortable. Like, why do we even have
like
a CEO title?
Too formal, like
totally.
for our size.
So it was sort of like this imposter syndrome stuff that I was like, I don't know, this is so weird.
Feels funny, yeah.
It's been like drinking from the fire hose since day one for sure. And honestly, there's been a lot of conversations that I've had with God, like, why in the world would you choose me for this? But I think that shows like his hand in all this. Like he chose a print sales guy.
Yeah.
Jeremy's never gone to college, like, and a teacher to do this. And so it just shows like he's been there and providing like since the beginning.
Yeah.
There's a lot of struggles with the role. Like I thought my version of my life was going to be being a stay-at-home mom, being there for every skin knee, like being that volunteer in the classroom and, you know, getting the gold sticker mom award at the end of the day. I don't know what that looks like, but I certainly haven't been earning it. And so I really wrestled with that. Like, God, why are you calling me away from these kids I'm supposed to raise? Especially in like the Christian world. Like that's what we're taught good women do. Like you raise your kids and you're there for every skin knee, and especially if you have 4 of them.
Yep. So how did you get okay with the life you're living?
Yeah. Through a lot of prayer.
Yep.
And asking him to either give me peace or make it obvious that I'm not supposed to be in that role.
Yeah.
And asking him too to like close doors you don't want me to go through. Like if you don't want me at the helm of this place, like close a door, provide someone else, like
and he hasn't.
He hasn't. And then also like he has provided peace, and he's provided for my kids in ways that I never would have imagined. Like we've had 2 nannies in 10 years that are amazing.
Yep.
And my mom and dad moved 2 doors away from us. My best friend moved in next door. Like he's provided this village of people who love on my kids. And he's also like humbled me enough to know that like I'm not supposed to be their everything. Yeah. Like and it's not about me getting a gold sticker. Like it's about him showing them his grace and his love at every turn. And that doesn't necessarily need to be taught by me every moment. And so yeah, I don't know. It's been a weird like wrestle with him, but he's given me peace about things, and you just keep taking one step ahead.
Yeah, totally. And now your kids are 13 down to 5. Yeah. Which is awesome. And 13, what grade is that? 8th grade?
7th. She's in 7th.
Yeah, 7th.
Yeah.
And we were talking before that my wife and I have 2 kids, and we just got out of the trenches of like not sleeping at night, which is awesome. And it feels like an accomplishment to like get through.
Oh, it is.
And then you were saying there's new trenches of teenage years and all that. But it seems like what you're doing, obviously the peace of God, and he hasn't closed doors, like, and your kids are doing well, that it is for sure what you're supposed to do. And I think like from what I can tell, and just knowing how God works, not that I know how God works, but the way that you set up your company and your lives in the first place of giving away 50%, God's blessing is on your company. Like it's crazy. It's not a Christian company, but it's doing amazing things. And not everybody that works for you believes what you believe. And so, but does everybody kind of know what you're about? What's it like being Christian owners of a business, and also taking the profits of the business and doing great things kingdom wise, like, and it's humanitarian, but it's also like for the kingdom. Do they know? And obviously they probably all love it, which is awesome, but
so it's interesting. We are never bashful about our faith story. Like, and actually I interview almost every person that comes on staff. And in that interview, I let them know like what drives me. Like for us, this is an act of faith and something that we feel called to do. That's not a requirement of you by any means. But what we do ask is that you're passionate about serving humanity. And if those values align, awesome. If it weirds you out that we're going to make decisions based on faith and not always what's best in business,
it's not the right place for you.
Yeah, then like I just want to be upfront about it now so you can opt out, you know?
Yeah.
But it's not a requirement of them. They just have to be passionate about why we exist, to elevate women and children living in extreme poverty. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a challenge to like have that balance, make sure that, you know, that you're not bashful about who you are and what drives you, but also leave space for other people to be driven by other things. And
totally.
And you know, one thing for Jeremy and I, like, we just hope that in our faith journey, like what people take out of it is love. Like we are all about a God of love and justice. And that's the Jesus that we want people to see in us. Yeah.
Amazing. I was going to ask you, this is kind of like a business question, but only because I'm interested. How have you grown yourself as the CEO organizationally? So when it goes from 4 employees to 12, from 12 to 50, 50 to where you're at of 100, basically, how have you expanded your mind and organizational understanding and leadership, like on this journey? And also, the follow up to that is, what are you doing now, preparing for 200 employees and 5 offices, and maybe offices not in the country? I don't know what your vision is, but
it's been like a huge learning curve. I love to read, so I've read a lot of organizational health books, Lencioni and others. For a long time, the Global Leadership Summit was a great source of inspiration and learning for me. Surrounding myself by others in the community that have done things that you can ask questions of, like, hey, where'd you go wrong? What would be your advice to me? Like, a lot of prayer too. Like, there's a lot of decisions every day that are hard. Like, it's a lot of choosing between 2 good things, or being in a tough situation where you have to make a hard call, and praying for the peace and intuition to like guide you on that too. For a long time, like I mentioned before, my role was sort of playing and wearing a lot of hats. So HR, finance, like it's a lot of Googling, it's a lot of calling on experts for like, how do you do this? What would you advise? And now we've gotten to the point where we're able to hire those experts. And so hire the people that have shared values and hearts and are experts in their field in finance or HR operations or whatever. From the beginning, we had the experts in our work, Jason Strong is our ECD, Michael Murray, our accountant, all that. But in those things that I was wearing hats, we've luckily been able to hire experts. And then you trust and you delegate and you empower them and you ask questions and you encourage them. And that's super fun. That's way more fun than doing it yourself. But now it's at that point where you're needing to strategize more, vision cast, like what do the next 5 years look like? What are the next 10? Where do we need a global office? Those are all things that now I'm wrestling with. And again, just asking experts, collaborating with our leadership team, doing research, reading best books, But I think part of the beauty of starting the agency and part of why we were successful is that I didn't know better. I'd never worked for another agency. So I wasn't trying to emulate something that I had experienced. It was really a blank slate. And I think that was part of our secret sauce, is that we didn't have to think outside the box because we didn't know what the box was. And so we got to invent ourselves differently than tradition would have dictated.
There's a lot of people that start things like founders syndrome, that they have a tough time letting go of things. And you said it's easy to let go because these people they're experts at what you do. As you've let go of things, how do you keep the culture of the organization that you like? They've got the same heart and they're excited about what the company's about, but even organizational culture and how staff treat each other and what it feels like to be in the office, as you let go of things and let go of kind of the control of it, even though you're still in charge, how have you kept the culture like strong? You have to hire really carefully. You have to invest a lot in the hiring process. And also, I'd say I love it when I'm able to promote or elevate people in the organization. So there's been a few people that are in really key positions that didn't start off there, but I recognized something in them that allowed them to grow really quickly too. And then you can't just be like, all right, peace out, like you're good. It's like being a teacher. It's like making sure that you give them enough along the way that they're not left floundering, but that they are empowered. And then it's also like making sure that you're modeling what you want. You're setting systems in place that tell people what we want to emulate. We have 10 employee attributes staff values.
That we just say, like, this is what you should embody if you're going to be successful at Latitude, like positivity, intellectual humility, curiosity, all these things that then we do our reviews around.
Intellectual humility. That's so genius. That's awesome.
Right. So it's a lot of intentionality of like, and then it's calling people out when they're not emulating that. And not
Well,
allowing
it's cool
it
that
in
you
the
have
workplace.
values that you can point to. It's not
Yeah.
like, hey, I don't like the way that you. It's like, no, we've got values on the wall. Like
Yeah.
you didn't do
Makes
that.
it super tangible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I was going to ask too, for you and Jeremy, starting something together, building something, scaling it out. How has it been, you being married and working together? There's plenty of people that are like, I don't think I could ever work with my spouse, like, because we want to stay married. And so, which is kind of weird. That's kind of like a negative statement about like your marriage, if you think that, but, how has it been? Obviously there's, I'm assuming challenges along the way of that, but
endless. Like it's been a gong show. I mean, if you would ask the people around us, they were probably like wondering if we were going to handle staying married and staying coworkers too.
Yeah.
Jeremy and I are complete opposites in almost everything except for our love for Jesus. Like it is ridiculous that we go to a lot of marriage therapy, a lot of counseling. We have, I mean, it's been super challenging. It's interesting as we've grown and we've been able to have clearer lanes. It's been better.
Yep.
And this last year, like, has been super fun. Where, so for a while when I had zero bandwidth,
You're like smirking.
I know I'm laughing because there was, like, when I say I was drinking from the fire hose, I'm not exaggerating. Like life.
Yeah,
like I was struggling to keep my head above water for many years, like the last 9.
Yeah.
And since I've been able to hire people.
And you've been doing this for 10 years.
Right. And so in the last year, we've been able to hire people to take some off of my plate. And so I have a bandwidth, which then allows me to get excited about his ideas instead of like, oh my gosh, I can't handle one more thing or expanding or this new office or that. I used to get really scared about all of his ideas. He is a visionary. He has a million ideas. Like he could start a new business every week. He's brilliant. But it scared the heck out of me because I was like, I can't do anything. Like I can't do more. I'm dying here.
Yeah.
But now we've figured out our roles. We figured out how to I figured out how to listen and say, okay, that's cool, without being like, he always goes, this is the wow, not how.
Yeah.
Just say wow.
Stop trying to get the practical stuff.
Stop figuring out how it's going to come to fruition. Just say wow. And you know what? I might move on tomorrow and you don't even need to worry about it.
Yes.
But so I was fear-based for a while, you know. We have a saying where we talk a lot about scarcity mentality and abundance mentality. Yeah. And I was so tired that I was starting to get in a scarcity mentality. Yeah.
And he's
not in our resources,
mentality.
but he's always in abundance mentality.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. And so, but it's good to recognize when you're in that place of like scarcity, because that's not a good place to be.
Yeah.
And that's not where God wants us. But
awesome.
Being married and owning a business together is a really challenging thing.
You guys have done it. And also, you didn't say this, but in the last 10 years, you've given $6.5 million all around the world in 26 different countries.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah. It's been a blast.
And it's for women and children.
Yeah. Living in extreme poverty.
So extreme poverty, those are the ties.
Yeah.
And $6.5 million. I mean,
it's all
that's
God.
just crazy.
God is so good.
Yeah, it's amazing. What are the next? So talking about like the growth of the organization, is there any vision that's like public vision of, will you do a global office? Like, are you like, how do you expand? What do the next 5 years look like for the organization? That you like the dream.
Yeah. So it's fun as we started out as a print production company doing mostly just executional stuff that other people were concepting. Then we grew into a full creative agency, strategy, ideation, conception, design, all that. And so as we continue to grow, the biggest thing that changes over the years is our capabilities. So now we have 3D, video, animation, content creation. A lot of technology is going. Our technology chops are definitely increasing and will continue to over the next 5 years. So I'd say the biggest change will be in our capabilities. And hopefully our client base along with that. We have our New York and Portland offices that remain pretty small. So hopefully those will become more robust with more staff so that they don't feel like a satellite office, but they feel like a full service offering.
What's the reason in having multiple locations? Because everything, like you can do like you can do any work. There has to be some type of benefit.
Yep.
Like,
So we have our first big client was Foot Locker in New York,
Yep.
Foot Inc. And so our presence with them and serving them well meant that we stayed in New York. And so
Stay
that
there. Yep.
made sense for us to continue in New York. And a lot of the retailers that we come to life in have headquarters or,
In New York.
presences in New York. Yep.
Got it.
And then our presence in Portland is directly off of our relationship with Adidas.
Yep.
We just believe in like presence and being there for our clients and making sure that we're.
So this is like these contracts are not like project based. They're like like you're on, what do they call it?
A retainer.
Yeah.
No, most of it's project by project, but it has grown to huge relationships.
That's
There's
crazy.
other clients in Portland too, but initially our main reason for being there was to serve Adidas well.
And then why Minneapolis? Because there's no major shoe company.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, our client base in Minneapolis is very small, but
But it's your biggest office.
it's so we have 90 staff in Minneapolis. A lot of our work gets produced in Minneapolis with print shops here, and so being close is a great thing. There's also a ton of creative talent in Minneapolis. So
There's one of them.
I know exactly.
Tissot.
Yeah. So it's just a hub of creativity. Some founders in the past have done our city great justice by putting a stake in the ground that we're going to be smart and in this creative field. So the staff is awesome. It's also home to us. So when we were going to start a business, it was like, where's grandma and grandpa? Because we're not doing this alone. But yeah, it's a variety of reasons, but it's worked really well.
Yeah. Back to the vision. Is there anything else just that you're looking forward to?
Well, some of our major clients do have global offices and are becoming more globally driven. And so that's a conversation that we're having of, do we put up a European office? Do we have a presence there in order to serve well? So we'll see, like there's a lot of LA clients that would possibly make it worthwhile to start an LA office, but we'll go wherever the opportunity is.
And the presence is needed.
Yep.
How often are you specifically in New York or Portland?
It just depends on the need. I used to be out there a lot more often, probably 4 times a year to each of them.
Oh, yeah, that's not too bad.
No, it's not. Jeremy a lot more. He travels a whole lot more than I do. But.
He just likes it, or he's needed. Like, he's building desks. I was joking. I think I said on a podcast one time I was in Latitude, and he like had a tape measure out. He's like, "Come check this out." And he's showing me all the grand scheme of the design of like this new desk that he was building. I was like, aren't you the president of this company? Yeah. But he's just.
We also load the dishwasher, or build desks, put together things when the need arises.
It was the first visit to any office that I was like, because he was like in the cafe. He's like, "Do you want anything?" And it was like fridges full of LaCroix and Red Bulls, and I was like, "This is like," because you hear about Google, but I was like, "This is like Google." It was like awesome.
Funny.
So, anyways,
that's fun.
Opening my eyes. Thanks so much for being here and for sharing your story and like. It's incredibly inspiring to see all that you've done. And for myself and my wife, we want to do we have that same thing. I guess maybe in me, like I'm more of the driver and the ideas and all this, and my wife's down for the ride for sure. But we want to do great things for the kingdom of God. We want to do exactly what He's asking us to do. But yeah, I appreciate it.
You are.
But there's always, and it's not that we're not completed in what we do. Like 100%, we love what we do, and we know we're exactly where God has asked us to be. And and I don't know if you know, the reason you had to drive to Apple Valley is because we used to pastor in Minneapolis, and 4 months ago, as we film this, moved to this campus, and so we're moving and all that stuff. But we know where we're supposed to be. But there's something in us that's like we want to do great things for the kingdom, even more. Like whatever that more is, we want to do it. And so to see somebody, phases ahead of us, even with family, like your kids are older than ours, and you have more kids than we have, but we'll have more. But it's just so inspiring to see like you guys have done it, and you may not feel that way, but it's just so awesome to see how you guys have built your life, and also lifestyle design too. Like you're living a big life. In 2019, you can have 3 offices, and you can do this, and you can be a mom, and you can it's just so crazy, like how you can live in 2019, in today's day and age, and you guys are doing it. So, I just appreciate you being.
Thank
I'm
you.
just talking,
No,
but
no, it's so fun. When my daughter struggled with me not being a stay-at-home mom for a while, and one of the challenges is just realizing that like whatever God's will is for our life is the best version of our life. Like it's not the easiest or whatever, but that's where we will find joy and contentment and all that. So like our stories all look different, but it's so fun to see other people using their God-given gifts for his kingdom and for his purposes. And thank you for doing that. You're an inspiration to us. Like,
Thanks.
It's awesome.
Appreciate it. 2 questions before we close out the podcast. What's your favorite book of all time?
Well, I should say the Bible. Right?
You should say that.
Yeah. My favorite book of all time. Wow, that's a hard one. It's interesting. I love to read historical fiction or nonfiction about World War II because I think it speaks to the fact that when we see ourselves as a means instead of an ends, there's a power in that. Bonhoeffer's book is amazing because he just realized like it could be about him or it could be about him serving a bigger cause.
Yep.
And so while it's a super long book, it's incredibly inspirational too, to just remember, like, look at those who've gone before us, who've given everything for their faith. And so I guess I'd have to say that, like, I'm a better person when I'm inspired by people like him and their stories. So
yeah, it's called Bonhoeffer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So people, you're saying stories, people that are living their lives for something bigger than
not
just themselves.
Not just trying to be the happiest, richest, most successful person, but seeing themselves as just a part in a bigger story.
Do you ever think about this? I said 2 questions, but this is another one. You ever think about like how it happened that you guys kind of changed your life, like, and got like Jeremy getting to the point of like, we're becoming the worst versions of ourselves. Like a lot of people get to that point when they're 60,
right?
Like, man, what did I just do with my life? But you guys got there when you were 30. Do you ever think about that? Like,
oh yeah, I'm grateful for it all the time, right? Like, and it's interesting. We had some people speaking into us too, but one of them was Jeff Gasick, founder of Healing Haiti, Jeremy's uncle, who it's when he sold a business at the age of 50 that he went on his first trip to Haiti, and he always told us, like, I wish I would have gotten it when I was 30, like you.
Yeah.
Like, and I think he saw himself in Jeremy and was just like, don't waste the next 20, 30 years. Like, let God have the driver's seat now. And so I'm really grateful that God put people like that in our lives to challenge us to think like, hey, you don't have to wait till you're retired or whatever to be about something bigger.
Yeah.
Do it now.
It's great. Last question. Here it is. The final question is, if you had one piece of advice to give to anybody listening in whatever stage of life they're in, or what you want to answer as, what's that one piece of advice?
Yeah, let God lead. Like,
and we'll wrap it up.
Yes. No, I've struggled with anxiety my whole life. Like, I am a control freak. I love to have a plan, and I would always like pat myself on the back for doing so. Yep. Right? Like, I was a responsible kid. I was a rule follower. All this, like, but really, it's when I let go of all that and like just trusted him that the best things happen. And so like letting him lead, which sounds so cheesy and like weird. And I'm like the worst listener in the world. So for me, I have to pray all the time, like, God, just make it obvious. Because I'm not good at sitting still and being like, oh, and God spoke to me. Like, I don't know. I don't hear his voice. It's all feelings and really intangibles, but trying to let go of myself and let him.
Yeah, let him lead. That's great. You can find Latitude at lat.co, right?
Yeah.
That's your website.
Yeah.
And also on social and all that. Can people find you?
Yeah.
On social?
Yeah.
Krista Carroll.
Cleary Carroll.
Krista Cleary. That's kind of a tongue twister.
I know, right?
Krista Cleary Carroll. Awesome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, we'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. We've got new episodes releasing every single week. We'd also love to hear your questions or comments. You can comment below. You can also find us on Instagram at Exception Podcast. And I want to give a quick shout out to our producer, Tissel. My name's Kirk Graham, and we'll see you back next week.